Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Thursday, February the 8th, 2024. Today I want to continue on the theme of the British royal family. So yesterday I discussed the horoscope of King Charles with reference to his diagnosis of cancer, which was announced on Monday. Today, I want to consider how that announcement might have impacted some of the people around him. Now, of course, the announcement on Monday was the announcement for the British public. We don't know for sure when Prince William and Prince Harry found out the news. It probably wasn't at the announcement. They were probably given warning days, I don't know, weeks earlier. But still, I want to consider what's going on in their charts at the moment. I also want to consider some other charts that I haven't looked at before, at least not for a long time. For example, the formal start of King Charles's reign. Okay, we know he became king the moment the Queen died, but that doesn't change the fact that the chart of his coronation is really important, and so I will be looking at his coronation chart. I also wanted to consider some dynastic charts. So the current ruling house is the House of Windsor. So the House of Windsor started sometime in 1917, but it was kind of quite a contrived chart because it was just a naming thing. Because prior to, I think it was off the top of my head, July the 17th, 1917, something like that. I know the date. I'll come when I come to it. So this chart was a chart when they when they changed the name from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to Windsor. Now the name change was simply because Saxe-Coburg-Gotha sounded too German, and it was 1917 in the First World War. This was when there was a lot of anti-German feeling, which a lot of it was really stupid. Like in Britain, we don't call German shepherds German shepherds. We call them Alsatians, because during the First World War, I believe that's the story goes. We didn't want to call them German. I think even German shepherds were even kicked in the street because they were German. So which kind of shows how stupid things were during the First World War. But that's why the change happened. So arguably, aside from this naming convention, you should say that, the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas are still the ruling house. And so when did the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas start? Well, it was with the death of Queen Victoria, which was on, I think, January the 22nd, 1901 at 6:30 p.m. in the Isle of Wight. So I kind of want to look at the death of Queen Victoria as a possible start chart as well. So there are some other charts I want to look at. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Thursday, February the 8th, 2024. Okay, so there's Harry, top right. He's just someone who's going to be affected, who has been affected, is being affected by Prince Charles's diagnosis, and and next to him is the old Queen, Queen Victoria. She was a Gemini, by the way. Okay, let's see. So here's the astrology for today. What's the main theme? You can see that the moon is in Aquarius. So the moon goes into Aquarius today at 1 minute to 2 in the afternoon in London. So it goes into Aquarius at 1 minute to 9 in the morning in New York, and 1 minute and 1 minute to 6 in the morning in Los Angeles, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Vancouver, etc., on the west coast of the US. So if you are in the Americas, then really you've got the moon in Aquarius all day. Well, unless you get up really early. But I suppose I'm speaking of that from the perspective of not someone who's really an early morning person. If you're in Australia and New Zealand, well, the moon is going to be in Capricorn all day. If you're in, I don't know, India, then sort of early evening, around 7:30 p.m. 7:29 p.m. I think, off the top of my head. The moon will go into Aquarius. So that kind of depends where you are. So you can see from that chart that the moment, just before the moon moves into Aquarius, it's making a conjunction to Mars, so early in the day, and particularly if you're in Australia and Asia, Europe, particularly Asia, Australia, you're going to feel that Moon-Mars conjunction. But I think all of us will feel it to some extent. Then the moment the moon moves into Aquarius, you can see that it's making a conjunction to Pluto. So that's something going on. So, moon in Aquarius, it's not just about all the Aquarian connotations. I mean, okay, when we hear moon in Aquarius, we can think, well, moon in Aquarius is going to be about being detached, being perhaps a bit individual, doing things our way. But with that moon conjunct Pluto, in some respects, it's a bit of a trigger. I mean, when the moon is conjunct Pluto, it's a reminder that, hey, Pluto is in Aquarius. So some of us might be quite focused on our personal obsessions with moon conjunct Pluto. And we also might get reminders that, things have changed. This is the first conjunction between the moon and Pluto following its recent sign change from Capricorn to Aquarius. So, we're going to get reminded that things have changed. We're going to perhaps see, the power of the state or the power of technology. And so for some of us, we might want to keep our head down because we're just, we know that there are heavy forces out there and we just have to, we have to respond accordingly. Now, another thing going on is the Sun is making a square to Uranus. There's the Sun at 19 Aquarius, Uranus 19 Taurus. So when you've got Sun square Uranus, you've got a lot of stubbornness there. It's in fixed signs. Uranus is a very stubborn planet. And so when the Sun is square Uranus, people are very attached to their ideas and their own way of seeing the world, and attached to their own way of rebelling. I suppose all of us have our inner rebel, and we all think we're going to rebel in a particular way. And yeah, each of us are going to be very attached to our inner rebel. And we're going to believe that our way of rebellion is the best way of rebellion. But we also shouldn't forget that Uranus is quite an accident-prone planet. So things can happen with Sun square Uranus that we simply weren't expecting, that we hadn't really planned for. So that is something we have to be aware of. We can't expect everything to go to plan, and if we're doing anything dangerous or risky, things could go wrong, and we should avoid playing around with fire and electricity, that kind of thing, nuclear experiments, So yes, that Sun square Uranus does need to be treated with respect. But if we're planning on launching a rebellion, maybe now is the time to do it. Perhaps. Um, so that's those are the sort of main themes for today. I suppose I should also point out that Mars at 26 Capricorn is making a sextile to Neptune. Um, this Mars sextile Neptune is about how we assert ourselves and what the best way of asserting ourselves might be. Now, if it was a Mars square Neptune, I'd probably be quite negative about it, but it's a sextile Neptune. Sextile, sextiles are a fortunate aspect. So if we want to get something done, possibly the way to do it is to be quite Neptunian about it. That's the concept of perhaps being a little deceptive, a little bit underhand, doing things in a roundabout way, rather than doing it in a direct way. And that should work quite well. Mars in Capricorn, it's still in its sign of exaltation, so sextile Neptune allows Mars to work around things and to perhaps find people's weak points or find organizations' weak points, and perhaps to get our way in a slow way, like the tide, rather than smash the walls down, slowly erode at the walls, erode at the foundations of something, and then that's how we get our way. As far as midpoints are concerned, the Sun is conjunct the Mars-Pluto midpoint. So there is it? So there's the Sun at 19. No, it can't possibly be conjunct the Mars-Pluto midpoint. Let me just check that. Why did I say that? Sorry, I meant the something very different. I meant it meant the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. Sorry about that. So there is Saturn, you can see, and there is Pluto, and the Sun is right between the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. So Sun on Saturn-Pluto midpoint, it's kind of more of the same, because I've just said that the Sun square Uranus is about having a lot of rebellious energy. Sun on the Saturn-Pluto midpoint would be a tension there, but really wanting to break things down. Saturn is structure, it's what is holding us up. Pluto is transformation, so Sun conjunct the Saturn-Pluto midpoint is going to be a real need to break things down that are holding us up. So whatever is restricting us, we're going to want to smash it. And this might, we might feel we're under a lot of pressure, and so might other people be under a lot of pressure. We're not going to be comfortable with existing restrictions, and we're going to want to, do something about it. So that's something that we really do have to be aware of, and especially when looking at other people's behaviour. Some people are going to be really hasty. People are going to be concerned about whatever is holding them back. They could behave in a dangerous way. So we have to consider our role in the matter, and perhaps we could try our best to be a restraining influence. So that's the broad picture for today. And what I want to do now is look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs on Thursday, February the 8th, 2024. Aries, you are feeling a bit of a change. So, recently, Aries, you have been, quite concerned about making progress, making a name for yourself. You have been rather concerned about, material details, making sure that you're properly recognised and rewarded. Now, in some ways, that's not going to change in the short term because Mars, your ruler, remains in Capricorn, a very earthy, materialistic sign, and in Capricorn, the sign of its exaltation. But some of that is going to change. You're going to be starting to think, well, why? What's the point? Just being rewarded for the sake of being rewarded is perhaps not enough. And with the moon starting to move into Aquarius, you're going to be thinking about something wider than your immediate material concerns. You may be thinking about sort of society at large and your role in society. And many Arians are actually quite interested and concerned about sort of politics and what's going on in the world. And you may look around you and think, wow, things aren't right. And at the same time, you're going to want to express yourself in a very individual way, and this might be reflected in how you relate to other people, especially friends and your social life in general. It's going to be important, and you're going to be concerned about what your friends are up to, what they're doing, what they're thinking. What they're thinking. Friendships can break up for a number of reasons, and what's happened recently, I've noticed, is that over the last few years, that very often friendships break up because of ideological reasons. What people think, for example, about what's going on in Gaza. That's just one example. Maybe things going on in your immediate community. I mean, what you think about Trump, if you're an American, what you think about Trump and what you think about, abortion or things like stuff like that can have an impact. When people hear what you have to say, they may want to reconsider their friendship with you. So, and you might want to reconsider your friendship with them. These are the times we're living in, especially with Pluto in Aquarius. So Aries, you are going to be concerned by people's opinions, and as a result of people's opinions, you might be tempted to change your relationship with them. Is that a good idea? I don't know. Probably not. Maybe Aries, part of the challenge of today is to accept what people say, even if you disagree with them, without sort of firing off. And of course, if you're an Aries, firing off can be something you often do. Now, another thing to point out, Aries, is that Mars is sextile Neptune. Mars is your ruler. So with Mars sextile your Neptune, you have to consider what is the best way of getting things done. I would put it to you that the best way of getting things done is not to be wildly assertive, not to go rushing in. Arians rush in where what does it? Angels fear to tread. Of course, I'm not going to say fools rush in where angels fear to tread. That's not the way to go about it, really, is it? You do have to take a slower approach and be more patient. Getting things done can take a bit of time. You have to understand what you're dealing with, and you have to slowly work out how best to get your way. And that might involve having an understanding of someone's weaknesses or an understanding of psychology, not attacking the target directly, but perhaps finding some roundabout way. or something like that. So I think that is the best way to handle things. I suppose I should say something about relationships. Relationships are becoming more important in a slow kind of way. I mean, Venus and Mars are slowly moving towards a conjunction. The conjunction isn't there yet. It won't happen for some time. But it's you're starting to feel this conjunction between Venus and Mars, and what this conjunction between Venus and Mars might be is about the slow process by which you and someone else start getting close to each other. So that could be how the Venus-Mars conjunction is working. So perhaps you want to consider, who is this person you're getting closer to? Because it's starting to happen. There are still going to be stuff happening on the way. This is a slow process. So do consider that. More immediately, and continuing on the theme of relationships, you may find that in a sort of one-to-one basis, some of the people close to you are very keen on establishing their authority. I mean, that's a dangerous thing to do, particularly when dealing with an Aries. But they're somehow someone's trying to pull rank on you, and trying to use knowledge as a way to get the better of you. So be aware of that. I'm not saying you have to sort of dramatically react. It's just something that perhaps you should be aware of. Taurus. It's a time, Taurus, when you are going to be thinking about material stuff, in particular your path. Okay, it's not just material stuff. That's a simplification. It's about your path and what you're supposed to be doing to move forward with your life. That may very well be about things like career and work, but it may not be. I suppose it depends on your personal situation. But you're going to want to make progress today. Particularly if you're in the Americas, Western Europe. That's going to be more of a theme for tomorrow if you're in Australia or New Zealand. But generally, Taurus, you are going to want to make progress, and you're going to be thinking about the things that may be holding you back, and also the new things on the horizon, which might help you. And so, if you look around you, you will notice that some things have changed. The landscape is not quite what it was, say, a month ago. And perhaps you can take advantage of this changed landscape. That might relate to technology, perhaps. And so don't be too traditional. I know that Taurus has a reputation for wanting to do things in the same old way, but I'd suggest that you don't get too caught up on that. But you do have a capacity to be inventive. So that's one thing going on today. So there are a few positive changes you can make in terms of business and career. Also, Taurus, I think you are going to want to be an authority today. That's going to be important. That whatever it is, you want to be the one who has the authority. And you may not take kindly to people who try to usurp your authority. So this does need some thought. Are you justified in wanting to be an authority figure today? Have you got what it takes? Is it reasonable? Is it useful? May well be useful, reasonable, but maybe not. So if you are going to assert your authority, I would think carefully about it and consider whether it is the right thing to do. Now, it might well be the right thing to do. I'm not saying it isn't, but that is something you need to consider. And perhaps going back onto the theme of how you are relating to the world around you in terms of the way you want to move forward and what's going on in your career, you are actually capable of creating a lot of change here. You really can do it. The sun has been moving through Aquarius for some time. And today it makes a square to Uranus, and Uranus is moving through your star sign. This is you, the inventive spirit, causing not just ripples, maybe causing explosions as well. You can have a big impact, quite a dramatic impact, and you can maybe force people to stop what they're doing and start again. This is something you can do, and I think you're going to be very stubborn about it. But nonetheless, a bit of subtlety might be worth considering. And in terms of subtlety, I think that some of the people around you, and this perhaps relates to relationships as well, may be starting to develop a strategy for dealing with you. How do you deal with you? And what's the best way of dealing with you? The best way of dealing with you right now is not to confront you head on. The best way of dealing with you is to work around your defenses, not to confront you directly. If someone if it's a hostile situation, then it's to undermine you slowly, and to. Sorry, I'm not trying to make you paranoid, am I? No, I'm not. So consider that. Consider how people are trying to get the better of you. Consider how people are trying to deal with you, and then perhaps take the appropriate measures. On the other hand, with relationships, allow people to demonstrate their subtlety. Taurus can be an extremely unsubtle sign, a really unsubtle. And the people close to you do have perhaps more subtlety than you. And perhaps you should allow them to use this subtlety, provided that subtlety is not being used against you. Allow people to be assertive in their own way, and don't necessarily pass comment, unless obviously you feel that it's really necessary. But overall, I think it's a day, Taurus, when you can be inventive, you can be original, you can make people stop and think, and in your own way, you can be something of a revolutionary with that Sun square Uranus, which affects your star sign. Oh, well, I should say, by the way, on this theme, I say affect your star sign. People do, in the comments, they often say, well, should you look at the astrology from the point of view of the sun, or from the perspective of the moon, or from the perspective of the ascendant? If you are looking at this forecast from the perspective of your star sign, yes, your star sign. If you are a Taurus rising, or perhaps you've got your moon in Taurus, then of course I'm referring to your ascendant sign or moon sign. But I'm a bit of a traditionalist. When I first started doing these, 12, these 12 sign forecasts, I was really thinking about the sun sign. And of course, the first sun sign columns, when they were written in the 1930s, the first sign columns written in the 1930s, they were intended for a population but had no immediate. Most of them had no immediate way of knowing their ascendant or their moon sign. Gemini. Things are changing, Gemini, and I think Gemini, you are now beginning to really think about what you believe in, what your philosophy on the world is, and that may relate to politics. It may relate to religion. And that can be sometimes difficult for a Gemini, because Geminis tend to think a lot. They have lots of little ideas, but actually creating a larger philosophical framework for Geminis can be difficult. In some ways, they find it too constraining, and they ask too many questions, and it can be difficult for them to really focus on just one thing. So that is a bit of a challenge today, but I think you are looking for meaning. Meaning beyond your everyday existence. Meaning in terms of wider society and from a spiritual perspective, the cosmos at large. And that is going to be important to you. And if you really try to consider meaning, you might have some quite major revelations today. If you allow yourself to have revelations, just relax. Don't ask too many questions. Allow yourself to be surprised, and perhaps, Gemini, allow yourself to change some of your opinions. That shouldn't be too difficult. You're a Gemini. Changing opinions should be very much part of the territory with your sign. So that is an important theme. But I think some Geminis may feel that they don't want to be entirely alone. They may feel they want to share whatever their experiences are with the world around them, and I think that may be an area of frustration for you. You may feel that your attempts to sort of link up with society are just being frustrated and delayed and constrained, and that's going to bother you. It's not something that is going to last so very long, but it's kind of going to be real, and it's going to be there, and you have to ask how best you deal with it. Now, one way of dealing with it might be through communication, telling people what's on your mind, explaining that you're trying to get something done, you're trying to get some feedback from the community at large, and you feel you're not getting that community, you're not getting the help you need, and perhaps when people hear what you've got to say, they may start being more considerate, and they may make some suggestions about how best you can interact with the community and the people around you. And I suppose one reason that is important, because from an idealistic point of view, I think you have got ideas about the way society should run. And so if you've got ideas about society, you'd kind of want to be engaging with society, but it's difficult to engage with society right now for Geminis. So that might represent a bit of discomfort for you, something that bothers you. And I think, Gemini, if you do want to get things done today, particularly if other people are involved, it's going to be important that you take a sort of a roundabout approach. That you don't be too direct. That you slowly but surely work on the problem. Yeah, it may take time, but just by you keep going, you keep pushing, you keep trying different strategies, but you don't draw attention to yourself. And I think that is the best way of getting results. And also, Gemini, you should remember that at the moment you're quite in tune with the world around you. You understand the restrictions, you understand what can be done, you understand what can't be done. And if you listen to your feelings, I think you're going to have a good understanding of what to do and what not to do. And just don't get caught up in trivia. It's not a day for getting caught up in trivia. Focus on the big picture, and I think today you can make good progress, even if you have a small sense of dissatisfaction. Cancer. Well, to an extent, it kind of depends where you are. If you're in sort of Asia, Australia, New Zealand, then possibly the dominant aspect will be a conjunction between the Moon and Mars. So there may be a certain sense of anger, particularly with other people on a one-to-one level, and everything may seem to be a bit of a fight. And you may feel that certain people are really trying to hold you back. If you're in the Americas and sort of later in the day in Western Europe, then and Eastern Europe as well, Europe in general, it's slightly different. I think you're going to realize that you can't get things done straight away. You also have to. You'll also start to realize that you live in a complicated world, and there are things to deal with that aren't always easy. Especially with today's conjunction between the Moon and Pluto, which, if you're in America, Western Europe, you're going to feel. If you're in America and Europe, and I suppose Africa, I shouldn't forget that. You're going to feel that conjunction between the Moon and Pluto at some stage, and that will create a certain heaviness, a sort of a feeling that it's just difficult to engage because you're dealing with things that you don't fully understand, that are perhaps out of your control, and you may then feel that you need a bit of protection. Really mainly emotional protection, that needs having a bit of distance from the world and its problems. So that's certainly something that you really do need to think about. But as I've been telling many people, that today, there is this sextile between Mars and Neptune, which I think does have an impact on you because Mars is moving through Capricorn, your opposite sign, and so Mars sextile Neptune is about the principle of being subtle, not using the direct approach. And for you, I think that is especially relevant to relationships and how you deal with people on a one-to-one basis. This is not a day for a direct action when dealing with people one-to-one. You have to be subtle. You have to be subtle, and you have to work around people. You have to use your intuition to understand what the best way of getting on with people is. Because it depends what you want from them. Are you trying to get close to them? Are you trying to get the better of them? Are you trying to defeat them? Are you trying to help them? It depends what you want. But whatever you want, whatever your intentions are regarding another person, the direct approach is unlikely to work. They won't appreciate it. They appreciate something more more indirect. So do consider that, Cancer, when you're trying to work out how best to deal with the various relationships in your life. Leo, the Sun is your ruling planet, and right now the Sun is square Uranus. So that indicates that you have the capacity for causing, mayhem, revolution, and chaos. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but you can be a disruptive force today. After all, the sun is your ruler. It's square Uranus, the planet of revolutions and earthquakes. So that's the kind of impact you can have today. Is that the kind of impact you want to have? I think it can be. If you can be very effective in that way, but do consider your impact, and I suppose it comes of your own stubbornness. You want things done your way. It may not be possible to get things done your way, and because of that, you might feel you have to put on extra pressure, and that's when the problems start, or where the chaos starts. So I think in most cases, Leo, you possibly have to tone things down, especially when you're under pressure. You can't always get your way. Especially now when the Sun, your ruler, is in Aquarius. The Sun is weak in Aquarius, all things being equal. After all, the Sun rules Leo. Aquarius is the opposite sign to the Sun. And so, you might feel that you have to put in extra effort to achieve anything. But that extra effort may be inappropriate. Maybe you have to work with the surrounding energies, and rather than work against them. Because if you work against them, you'll be causing a lot of trouble. You'll get noticed, but will you achieve anything? Probably not. And matters aren't helped by the fact that the Sun, your ruler, is conjunct the Saturn-Pluto midpoint. You may want to use an incredible amount of force to break the walls down, whatever those walls are, holding you back. But is it worth it? I suspect it may not be worth it, and it may be that today the best approach is to just accept the situation as it is. Especially as the moon is starting to move into Aquarius, your opposite sign. With the moon moving into Aquarius, your opposite sign, you do have to accept that the world out there and the people out there do have power. They do have an impact on the way you're living your life, and work round the issue, work round the problem. Don't try and fight it. And it may be on a positive note that there are certain people who can be really helpful if you give them a chance, Leo. But you've got to give them a chance, and that might require a certain amount of humility. Virgo, there are things that need to be done today, and it could be annoying. I know that Virgo is very focused on making sure that all the various facets around them are all in the right order, in the right place, and that is important to you. And you may feel that what you really want is some kind of unifying process where everyone else is engaged in what you're trying to do, and enlisting support and help is, I think it could be very important for you. Especially if you're working in a situation where there are other people around you, whether that's in your family or at work. But I'm afraid, Virgo, that the support you're looking for may not be forthcoming, at least to begin with. You may have to accept a certain amount of delay, and you may feel that certain people are just being really unhelpful. You're asking, why can't they give you 5 minutes of your time? It's not that much of an effort, but these people with unhelpfulness is getting in the way of your attempts to create some kind of joint approach for dealing with an issue. As far as you're concerned, that's a way to get things done. You're just not getting the cooperation that you would like. And I would suggest that perhaps you accept the situation, at least in the short term. It's the way things are, because there's no point, Virgo, in just getting angry for the sake of it. It's just not going to achieve anything. But on a positive note, I do think you're not entirely alone. I think there's one particular person who has got a lot of energy, and they can, in a way, sort of redeem the rest of society in your eyes. So yes, you might see that society is not up to standard, is not fulfilling its obligations, but one person will fulfill their obligations and will give you the support and sort of energetic cooperation that you're looking for. I mean, if you give them a chance, of course. Don't criticize someone if they're doing things in a way that you don't fully approve of. Getting help is something you should be looking for, even if that help isn't entirely what you wanted. Because if someone tries to help you, tries to offer their hand, but it's not quite what you were looking for, the temptation is to say, no, you want it like this, not like that, but then you would just be ruining the chance. So give other people an opportunity to help them, to help you in their way. One final point, don't overdo it today. There is some emphasis on health, and you've only got so much energy, and if you try to do too many things at once, you are going to exhaust yourself. So do make sure you look after yourself and do understand your limits. If you're going to do something, engage in some piece of hard work, give yourself, make sure there's a time limit. You can't spend all day on it. You will exhaust yourself and you'll do yourself in. So your health needs to be looked after. Now, I'm not, by the way, making some dire warning here. I'm just saying you've got to think about your body, your physical body, and I suppose your psychological health as well. But I'm thinking probably more about your physical body. Just look after it, because that's the most important thing. Libra, you are quite energetic and creative today. Libra, you can see possibilities that perhaps weren't there not so recently, and with your energy, you can make things happen, and you can make the world a better place, and you can make the world a more exciting place. So don't hold back, and don't allow other people's influence to restrain you. I mean, what matters is you and your creativity. This is because the moon is moving into Aquarius. Libra is an air sign, and so when you're starting to get a lot of planets in Aquarius, from a Libran perspective, Aquarius and Libra have a nice connection with each other, and so you can really show the world what you can do. And I don't think that I don't think you should apologize for that. And don't be too serious. Sometimes a sort of a childlike and playful approach does work best within certain limits. And talking about those limits, although you do have this playful and creative way of looking at the world at the moment, I think you do understand the role of authority. Who is the authority at the moment? In some respects, Libra, you are able to establish your authority today in at least one area. That's something I don't think that you're entirely comfortable with doing, because you may have doubts. Should you be taken seriously? Do you know enough? Do you have enough experience? Will you be defied? I don't have these doubts. There is an area where you are an authority, and you are able to demonstrate that authority. And I think if you do that, people are going to listen to you. So in the midst of creative, playful happiness, Libra, you can be an authority figure. You can use some of your assertive power to establish your control, and that's not something you should be afraid of. Looking at relationships, you do have to understand the way people are. I think some of the people around you, they're quite set in their ways. They have a particular way they want to do things. It's not a direct way, and it's quite an intuitive, patient approach, and I think you have to respect this. It's certainly not a time for trying to push particular people into doing things right now. You have to have an appreciation for their particular timing. So you need to listen to your feelings about that. You need to listen to other people's feelings, because actually those other people, they're listening to your feelings as well. And there is a sense of getting the timing right if you're trying to get someone to do something, if you're trying to get closer to someone, and at the same time, it may be that one or two people are trying to get through to you, and they're not using a direct approach, and so you need to be sensitive to that, because it's quite clever what they're doing, how they're trying to get your attention. So you need to appreciate that and understand it, and it's not going to be in your face. So really, Libra, that's the picture. I think you're in a strong position today. You can do what you like, within reason, of course. And don't underestimate your ability to be an authority in particular areas of your life. Scorpio. Scorpio, you're somewhat conflicted today. I mean, on, I won't say conflicted, but in some ways you want to do things your way. I mean, remember, the Sun is square Uranus. It's, there are things you want, and you want them done in a particular way. The Sun in your horoscope has a particular association with moving forward, cutting out a path for yourself. And it's square Uranus. That's what you want to do. You have a particular individual path that you want to pursue, and you want to do it with great vigor. On the other hand, you are not really in the mood for interacting with the world at large. So you're trying to make progress in the world, perhaps in quite a dynamic way, but at the same time you don't want to engage with the world. So how do you sort of reconcile those two impulses? Well, possibly we conceive a reconciliation through a sextile aspect between Mars and Neptune. So Mars is your ruling planet. It's in Capricorn. It's very strong at the moment. It's exalted, and it's making the sextile to Neptune. This is about the Scorpio approach. The Scorpio approach is not obvious. It's Mars sextile Neptune works out ways of doing things, works out ways of asserting itself, which is perhaps somewhat devious, which works at times in secret, in private, and has an extended time scale. It's not interested in getting results in 5 minutes. It's prepared to wait. And that's the way to do it. That's the way to get things done. Ideally, you're going to get things done without people actually knowing that you're getting things done. And then suddenly at a later stage, people will realize what you've achieved. So that's really the way you should, I think, be going about things. And in the process, you can actually do something pretty dramatic. That Sun square Uranus is your impatience to have an impact. It's there. This impatience. You can be impatient. It's okay to be impatient, because impatience is a way to get things done. It's an impulse to make sure that everything that needs to be done is done. So yeah, you don't worry about being impatient, but really you can be impatient, but other people don't need to know that you're being impatient. Now, if you start to show your impatience, that could be a problem. Reason being is that Uranus is moving through Taurus, your opposite sign. So at times over the last few years, there's been, relationships have been disrupted, and so when Sun squares Uranus, then your impulsiveness can cause a lot of damage, and impatience. That's the last thing we need today. So if you want to keep relationships moving in a sort of stable direction, then somehow you've got to keep your impatience to yourself. And I'm not advocating but you repress things. Repression is something I should never advocate. Rather, it's saying there are ways of dealing with your impatience in a way that's just not destructive. It doesn't involve direct confrontation. Sagittarius, you are feeling a bit better today, particularly if you're in the Americas. Things, and Western Europe and Europe to an extent. Things are sort of becoming more interesting. you can see the variety, and at the same time, Sagittarius, I think people are starting to listen to you. The power of your personality is starting to have an impact. I think it's very clear. So yeah, overall, Sagittarius, you're in a stronger position, and I think you're less concerned about sort of material details and money and what things cost. You're more interested in engaging with the world around you, making sure that people know who you are, they know where you are, and they know what you think, and that yeah, you've got that people can hear what you've got to say, because you've obviously got some very important and interesting things to say. Yeah, interesting, because Sagittarius, you are interesting. You may not think you're interesting, but you are interesting. And when people hear what your views are, I think they're going to be favourably impressed, and you may be able to cheer people up, because particularly particularly the people around you. People you know well, because some people, they're feeling a bit negative, they're feeling a bit down. What are they down about? They're just feeling alienated. They're feeling alienated from society. They're feeling that they can't have any impact. There's a certain sense of powerlessness there. And Sagittarius, you can come in and you can engage with them, and you can listen to what's on their mind, and I think you can make them feel a whole lot better. And in fact, Sagittarius, in many cases, you can empower people. So if there's someone who feels that they're useless, that they can't do anything, you can listen to them, and you can make suggestions, and through the presence of your personality, yeah, you can be empowering. So that might be relevant at work. If someone finds they can't perform properly, it can be relevant in your family as well. So if there's some family member who just is a bit down about what they can achieve, then you can step in and give them the inspiration to make the most of their various talents. So I think, Sagittarius, that today you are very much a force for good, and with the Moon conjunct Pluto, your words can have a big impact. Of course, you've got to get those words out first. There may be, for some sort of more timid, introverted Sagittarians, there may be a sort of an unwillingness to express yourself. But once those words come out, you'll see the impact, and I think that it will be entirely favourable. Capricorn. Well, the emphasis on Capricorn is starting to fade a bit, although Venus and Mars are still in your star sign, but the Moon is moving out of Capricorn. So with the Moon moving out of Capricorn, you may be feeling less concerned about yourself, and perhaps more concerned about what you control, what you own, that kind of thing. And so money may become an issue over the next day or two, and you may be trying to consider new ways of making money, or ways of preserving money, and in the process you may have to be quite original. I mean, you may want to be original. Don't think that the old ways of dealing with money are necessarily the best ways. There may be new approaches which you need to consider. So think about that, and be open to, be open to new ideas about how best to handle your finances. Of course, just because something is new doesn't mean it's good. There's always new ideas can of course be very dangerous, particularly when it comes to money. So, of course, do your own research in that particular area. Turning to relationships, I think that you may find that the people close to you, they may be in a slight process of flux. They may feel that they're moving from one place to another. They may also feel that the world it's quite a heavy, difficult place. And even if they're not articulating it, they might have a sort of a sense of being out of place. And so you have to accept other people's uncertainty. In a situation where you yourself at times might feel a bit uncertain. So how do you deal with people who are feeling uncertain? I think you can provide reassurance, but also time is important, because if you're in a new environment, it just does take time to get used to this new environment. And so Capricorn, that might be something you want to do. Having said that, many Capricorns today, maybe not just today, but you are in a state of mind where you do feel that you need to be in control. You don't want to be the one being controlled. That's going to be a theme for today. I think it's going to be a theme for tomorrow as well. I think it's a broad theme at the moment. You want to be in control, and you don't want to be told what to do. You don't want to be at the receiving end of someone else's authority, and so Capricorn, I think it's just going to be important that you maintain a high level of control and authority, and if possible, you use it properly. Because if you use it properly, then people will approach you in a particular way, and they'll say, well, maybe Capricorn is you are the authority figure, you're the one in control, and of course that gives you responsibility. And if you are in any position of control or authority, family, work, your network of friends, whatever, societies, then that does create a certain sense of obligation, and you will be expected perhaps to make a decision today on other people's behalf, a decision which does affect people. So consider that decision, and I think you'll make the right decision. But of course, with making, if you have to make a decision, that of course does bring a certain amount of responsibility. Aquarius, the moon is starting to move through your star sign. Certainly, if you're in Europe and the Americas, it's good, because when the moon goes into your star sign, it gives you. Okay, remember, but I say star sign. It depends how you're looking at these forecasts. Maybe you're looking at it from a perspective of the ascendant, in which case the moon is moving into your ascendant sign, or perhaps you're looking at it from a perspective of the moon. In that case, it's moving into your moon sign. It depends how you're looking at these forecasts of the 12 signs. But the moon is moving into your sign. And so with the moon moving into your sign, you're feeling a certain sense of being at one with yourself. You believe that your vision of the world is correct. You believe that your particular way of being unique is the right approach, and I think that gives you a great deal of confidence, and I think your confidence is going to be enhanced by the fact that you're in a position to create change. And I think one reason why you're going to be able to create change today is because people trust you. You are someone who you're someone who does have control and gravitas and authority, and you know what you're doing. I mean, do you know what you're doing? Well, I think in most cases you do know what you're doing. Unless you're straying into territory that is completely unfamiliar, but assuming that you are working from familiar territory, you're in a place where you feel comfortable, then yes, I think that you certainly can make the world a better place. At the same time, I should point out that the Sun is making a square to Uranus. Now, the Sun in the Aquarian chart rules your opposite sign of Leo, and this Sun square Uranus may say something about other people, the people around you, the people you have to deal with. So Sun square Uranus is about people who could actually be really difficult. They want things done in a particular way. They're not prepared to compromise. And if you push them, there could be problems. So in terms of relationships, I think you need to tread carefully. You might be an authority in general, but specifically when you're dealing with one other person on a one-to-one basis, you do have to tread carefully. They're not going to take kindly to being told what to do. And even then, even if you don't tell them what to do, there is great capacity today for one person to cause a huge amount of damage. That person might be someone you know, might be a stranger, just one particular person at work, whatever. One person can cause a lot of trouble. And so, Aquarius, you need to be ready for that. And I don't think it's a situation where direct confrontation is the best approach. I think you need to perhaps step back a little if you do get involved in that, because you're not going to change anyone's mind if once they start becoming obnoxious. You just probably just have to let the whole thing pass. And in certain situations, it may be best to just respect someone's need to be an individual, even if it doesn't feel right, if you don't feel that they deserve that kind of respect. But I think you have to be ready for that, because it is a situation which I think is going to pass. But overall, Aquarius, the moon is moving into your star sign. You're feeling comfortable, and I suppose just steer clear of obnoxious people. Then things should be fine. Pisces. Well, Pisces, in one sense, you have a clear sense of what you want to do, and I think you have the power to do it. But don't overextend yourself. You have the power to do something which is important to you, probably in about one area of your life. There's one thing, the most important thing, you can make it happen. You have the strength, you have the dynamism, and it can work fine. But it's not really a day for scattering your resources, and I don't think it's really a day for spending too much time with with other people, and that's especially the case if you are in the Americas, perhaps Western Europe. If you're in the Americas, I think you're going to need quite a lot of time on your own to sort of work things through. There have been some heavy things going on, not just for you, but for society at large. And, you need time to sort of take that on board. Now, if you're in Australia or New Zealand or Asia, I wouldn't have said that's necessarily true. I think if you're there, then yes, I think you can be more assertive, you can be more interactive, you can take advantage of a conjunction between the Moon and Mars, which really does allow you to stamp your authority. I've been using the word authority quite a lot today for all of the 12 signs. I think authority is important for everyone and how we deal with authority, whether that authority comes from other people, or from the outside, or whether it comes from us. But you are quite assertive if you are, an Australian Pisces, or a Philippine Pisces, or you're in Vladivostok. You can be quite assertive. So in terms of your social life, yes, you can tell people what you want, what you don't want, and I think people are going to listen to you, and a little bit of anger and aggression, carefully managed, could be very effective. But if you're in the Americas, it's kind of a different story. And you're going to start to need time, on your own, because that's the best way of sort of marshalling your resources, and making the most of everything you've got. And also Pisces, Mars is sextile Neptune. Now Neptune does not rule Pisces. Jupiter rules Pisces, but nonetheless, I would say that Neptune is going through your star sign, and so with Mars sextile Neptune, for wherever you're living in the world, Pisces, whether you're in Vladivostok, or Manila, or Sydney, or Los Angeles, Mars sextile Neptune is perhaps telling you how best to handle the day's energies, and a subtle approach, not drawing attention to yourself, is probably the most appropriate way of achieving your aims. And by aims, I'm not just talking about your material aims, but your aims regarding your aspirations, because that's important. Your aspirations, you can achieve your aspirations and what you want for yourself and society, or at least your community, but you have to be subtle about it. You can't just shout and bully people into doing things your way. No, that's not the right approach. Those were my forecasts for the 12 signs. So that's looking at the day from an astrological perspective. And now I want to look at the day from the perspective of the I Ching. So, I asked the question, what is Thursday going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this YouTube video? The first hexagram I threw was hexagram number 48, which is the well. Now, the well represents something which is always there. It's about talents which are always there. They're not going away. Because that's the symbol, isn't it? The well is the idea of I suppose it's public property, perhaps. The water is in the well. People can always go to that well to get the water they need. And so with this hexagram, there is a lot of thinking about your abilities and your talents and what you can do and what you can't do, but more what you can do. But one of the symbols here, because we've got a moving line, the third line moves from the bottom. Third line can be quite unfortunate, and the symbol here is of a well, which has got some wonderful water in it, but no one's using it. It's being neglected, which is such a shame. And I think that might be how some of us feel at the moment. We've got all of these talents. We're doing something absolutely wonderful. We've got these abilities, but we're being ignored. We're not being used. The world is, there's this frustration that we're not being. I won't say not being appreciated, because we need to look at it from a social perspective. We've got these abilities. We can make our part of the world so much better. And if we're going to work today, we've got things we can really offer people, but no one's interested, and that's incredibly frustrating. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like that. I put up a YouTube video and a few hundred people watch it, and in my arrogance, I'm thinking, "Oh, this is wonderful. 100,000 people should be watching it." And I'm not there. Well, that's just my ego. But anyway, it's that feeling that we're not being fully appreciated with the well. But don't worry. There are two lines that move. The top line moves as well, and normally very often in I Ching, the top line can be quite unfortunate, but in this case it's not unfortunate. It does actually show that after this period of frustration, people not really appreciating us and not really understanding what we can do, we finally get the appreciation we deserve. More and more people start to use the well. So remember, we can see our talents as being like that well. We are trying to make ourselves available for the community. To begin with, we're not recognized, but I suppose in the end we get the recognition, or at least we start to get the recognition we deserve. So don't panic and don't get too depressed if you feel that your resources and your talents and your education are being wasted because something. Don't worry. People will find the well, and then the well moves to a different hexagram, which is dispersion. Dispersion. It's another water theme because, with a well, we've got water in a well. With dispersion, we've got water everywhere. I kind of like to see dispersion as being like a washing machine. Everything gets washed up, moved left, right, and the center. So it may actually be that dispersion is talking about we have our talents, and our abilities, which we have been keeping in one place, and actually sometimes keeping secretly in one place, and then suddenly they go everywhere. So there may be a situation where our abilities and our capacity to make the world better start to be widely appreciated, to the point where it's like a sort of a rainstorm and everything gets moved upside down, left, right, and center. We may actually panic. It's like being in a storm, and we might wonder, whether we're going to survive the storm. But it's perhaps a storm of our own abilities, a storm of our own talents. And are we going to get recognized? Are we not going to recognize? Worrying about, whether we're going to make things worse. But because of this storm, things move a lot. And so when the storm is over, we might find we're in somewhere completely different, and we actually get moved to somewhere that we wouldn't normally be able to get to. And that's dispersion, and that is the fortunate side of dispersion. So don't panic if you're involved in a storm, perhaps late in the day, because you will end up in the right place. I think it looks good. It looks exciting, and main thing is don't get upset if to begin with you feel that your talents aren't being recognised, because things will change. Okay, so what I want to do now is kind of move back to the theme of the theme of the royal family and this announcement from Charles. And I wanted to look a little bit about how people are responding to it. What impact is it having? And I also wanted to sort of look at things like the coronation chart. And I think the coronation chart is probably a good place to start. One of someone commenting, Sabrina, I think. Sabrina, thank you for pointing out for asking about the coronation, reminding me to look at the coronation chart. This is a chart, I believe, for Charles's coronation. The Financial Times said that he was born. He was crowned at 2 minutes past 12. So this is a chart for Charles's coronation. I think this chart kind of indicates that they didn't really consult astrologers. So this is not a good chart, his coronation chart. As someone else pointed out, there is this obsession with eclipses in terms of a royal family. Of a lot of royal family members were born close to eclipses, and here we've got. This happened, I think, just after an eclipse. I don't think it was a very a particularly dramatic eclipse, but I think it was nonetheless an eclipse because you've got the North Node and the Sun. And the Sun are pretty close. So we had this new moon. So the moon is just separating from a full moon. And the moon is in Scorpio. So the moon is not in a good position there. The moon is fallen in Scorpio. So this is, by the way, the coronation is not the actual time that Prince Charles became king. That was when his mother died, but this is like the formal public time that he was given, that he was crowned. And symbolically, it is important. And the moon is actually it's almost void of course. So what is the definition of void of course? The void of course is when the moon has made its last aspect before leaving the sign. And when I say last aspect, I mean last aspect to a traditional planet. I don't count Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The only thing that might possibly make the moon, and when I say last aspect, I mean last major aspect. And I'm using last major traditional aspect. Conjunction, square, opposition, sextile, trine. Not even my favourite semi-squares and sesquiquadrates, although I love semi-squares and sesquiquadrates. For this kind of chart, I wouldn't count them in terms of a definition of void of course. It's kind of the Ptolemaic aspect, the major Ptolemaic aspects. The moon is making a sextile to the part of fortune, and that kind of might save it from being void of course, but there might be some controversy about that. But having the moon opposition the sun in Scorpio is a pretty bad time to have a coronation. Though I understand that we can see Charles in that chart. If we look at King Charles's chart, remember King Charles has a moon node conjunction. His moon at 0 degrees Taurus, his north node at 4 degrees Taurus. So going back to the time of the conjunction, having the midheaven at 1 degrees 33 Taurus is it is important, and I think it's nice, perhaps, that the the North Node at the time of Charles's coronation. I mean, if we link those two charts up, so if we look at Charles and the coronation chart, just to show you what I mean, he was crowned on his North Node return. So the North Node 458. King Charles has North Node at 458 Taurus. The North Node was at 403 Taurus. The Moon was on his the midheaven was on a degree of his Moon. So I think we can say, from a sort of spiritual point of view, that broadly speaking, this is the right thing for him doing. If you're to be doing, becoming king on your North Node return, yeah, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is your destiny unfolding. But the fact that he was crowned just after the full moon, with the moon in Scorpio, suggests that it's almost like too late. This is not a new beginning; it's an ending. This coronation. The moon is waning now. This is the malefic side of the lunar cycle, and yeah, with the moon in Scorpio, I don't regard this as being particularly fortunate. Now, if you take the coronation chart, the coronation chart has its midheaven at 1 degree Scorpio. So if you consider what is going on and what is going on right now, then we can start to see perhaps the problems with particular reference to the recent announcement that Charles has cancer. So inside we can see that the coronation chart has a midheaven at 1 degree 33 Taurus, but there is this conjunction between Mercury and Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. So we've got Pluto square the coronation chart's midheaven, and I think that is difficult. It shows that already the thing is sort of moving into crisis, and then Mercury is coming along to bring. Mercury is also square the coronation chart's midheaven. So the whole direction of Charles's monarchy is already starting to go a bit awry. Another thing about the coronation chart is at the time of the announcement that Charles had cancer, the sun is at 16 degrees 5 minutes Aquarius, and so it's conjunct the descendant of the coronation chart, and I think that is a problem, because the descendant represents in some respects the ending. It's a sign that it's got a sort of a sunset feel to it, and so it almost feels like the moment this reign is starting, it's almost coming to an end now. Now, by the way, I'm not talking about Charles dying or anything like that, but there is that feeling here with the sun on the descendant, and the coronation chart has sort of been hit in quite a difficult way. And another thing about the coronation chart is that Saturn is on the coronation chart. Saturn is at 5 degrees 47 Pisces. So what happened is Saturn was at 540 on the 8th house cusp. The 8th house is a house of death, and so Saturn. So in a way, the coronation chart is having a Saturn return, even though it's less than a year after the coronation. And the reason that is because Saturn goes retrograde, and then it just goes back to where it was at the coronation. It's not really a full Saturn return. It's not 29 and a half years later. It's less than a year later, because Saturn is retrograding back and forth. And so we almost have a Saturn return feel to the monarchy, to Charles's reign, even though it's less than a year old. So that's quite interesting. I think it's something astrologers don't often talk about. I haven't really talked about it before, but I thought that's potentially quite important. But I wanted to actually go back a bit to ask about the family, about the Windsors. This is the House of Windsor, and so the question is, when did the House of when did it start? Now, the name change happened in 1917, but from a familial point of view, aside from a name change, you could argue that the house that Charles is part of is actually the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, but they just changed their name in 1917. So we've got Queen Victoria's death. That's when it started, when Queen Victoria died on January the 22nd, 1901. And she died in the Isle of Wight. Because there's this house, the Osborne House, and so monarchs used to spend a lot of time in the Isle of Wight. They used to like the Isle of Wight. If you don't know where the Isle of Wight is, it's this island which is right next to the British English coast. I think it's across the water from Southampton, and a lot of people like to go there on holiday, and the Kings are there. We've got this in my own family. We have this family story. I should have written it down. That when my father was a child, he was on the beach in the Isle of Wight, and while he was on the beach with his brother, he actually met the king. He met George V passed by, and I can't remember what George V said. I wasn't there, but George V made some joke about crabs and making sure that my father didn't get bitten by crabs, or something like that. But anyway, that shows that the Isle of Wight was important has been important to the British monarchy. And yes, my father did meet George V on the beach in the Isle of Wight. So she died on the Isle of Wight. And so this is the chart for the Queen Victoria's death, and you can see that there was a Sun-Mercury conjunction at this time. So it wasn't just a chart of Queen Victoria's death; it was a chart for her son, Edward VII, becoming king. Okay, I'm not taking the coronation chart. Perhaps I should look at the coronation chart as well. But I'm just taking this death moment, and long live the king. This is a moment the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha dynasty de facto took over. Yes, it changed its name, but really Charles is part of this dynasty, and we have a Sun-Mercury conjunction. Now, if you go back to the if you go back to the coronation chart, that Sun-Mercury conjunction is square the midheaven. But most importantly, if you compare the death of Queen Victoria with the announcement that Charles has cancer, then you can see that this Mercury-Pluto conjunction is moving on to the Sun-Mercury conjunction of the chart for Queen Victoria dying. So I think that that might be important. Um, and I don't know whether it's also important, but Uranus was at 15 Sagittarius sorry, the death of Queen Victoria. Uranus was at 15 Sagittarius, and so the Moon is conjunct the Uranus. So that shows the Uranus at the death of Queen Victoria was this sort of. I suppose I know she was old. She was relatively old for the time, 81. But the Moon at the Cancer announcement was at the same. Was pretty much it was in the same degree as Aquarius, as Uranus was when Queen Victoria died. In fact, when Queen Victoria died, there was a Uranus-Pluto opposition. So, in a way, the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha dynasty, which became the Windsor dynasty, has this Uranus-Pluto opposition, and the moon was triggering it when we had the announcement that Charles had cancer. Okay, another chart you might want to take, which I don't have a timing for, is when the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha dynasty changed its name on July the 17th, 1917. You know, this was just pure anti-German. I don't know. It's just anti-German nonsense. As I said, people kicking German shepherds in the street during the First World War and having to, because they're German, and them having to change their name to Alsatians. Alsace being that part of France which is on the east, right next to the German border, which is kind of ridiculous. You see all this cancer in this chart, in the chart for the renaming of the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha dynasty to the Windsors. Cancer is in the middle of the First World War. Cancer is about the nation. It's about national chauvinism. Cancer is about dying for your country. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It's honourable, sweet and honourable to die for your country. All of that thing with Pluto in Cancer during the First World War. All these hundreds of thousands, millions of young men, British as well as other parts of the world, Germans, French, dying pretty much for nothing. So that's a chart for the Windsors, and I think there's something. I don't really like that chart. I don't like all that Cancer. It's just so. It's so parochial. It's so inward looking, and it's so national. And I suppose, the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, you had this sort of international feel for it. We were linked to all these European royal houses, but this is a very British thing. This is Windsor. I mean, Windsor, the Windsor Castle. It's kind of grim, isn't it? And so the question is, what impact did the announcement have on if this is the beginning of the dynasty? So let's see if there's any connections there. Remember, I don't have the time of birth. I suppose the thing that stands out is there's Mercury. Mercury was at 2947 Cancer, approximately at the time that the Windsor dynasty came into being in 1917, and I suppose you could say that you had this Mercury and Mercury-Pluto conjunction, right opposition, which was on the opposition to it. So that might be of some significance. It does seem that this Mercury-Pluto conjunction, when Charles's cancer was announced, really is the theme. This Mercury-Pluto conjunction is, it is really, I think, starting to work. Okay, so that's, coronation chart, possible chart of the Windsors, the Saxe-Coburgs. What about individual sort of members of the royal family? How might they have been impacted by it? Now, looking at Prince William's chart, so here's Prince William's chart. So he was born June the 21st, 1982. You can see he was born close to an eclipse, solar eclipse. Remember the eclipse that King Charles was crowned under. I'm not saying that anything too dramatic was going on, though in terms of these are his transits, sort of out on the sort of outer wheel. I think one of the main things that William is experiencing at the moment is he's got Neptune. He's had this year. He's had Neptune square his Neptune. Prince William has Neptune rising, and I think this needs a lot more thought. Prince William having Neptune rising, and it's somewhat confusing. You don't kind of associate Prince William with having Neptune rising. Perhaps he's quite good at hiding what he's really feeling. Neptune perhaps hides what he touches. And Neptune is square Neptune. And in fact, Neptune is starting to move towards a square of his ascendant. So I'm not saying anything particular about this announcement. Of course, he would have found out before the announcement. But I do think it's a time that is difficult and I think confusing for him. I think confusion is quite an important theme for him. We should also look at Saturn. So Saturn is at 6:57 Pisces at the time of the announcement. There's William's Mercury at 8:58 Gemini. Saturn hitting your Mercury. I mean, it can make you feel down. It can make you feel depressed. Mercury is about how you think, what you think of the world, where you think it's going, where you think it's not going. And so with Saturn square Mercury, I think he could feel a bit down about a lot of things and have quite a sort of negative view of the future, particularly when Neptune is square his ascendant. In terms of transits, I don't think things are particularly easy for William right now. And by the way, to make it fair, my sun is at 8 degrees 13 Gemini, and so I'm going to have Saturn square my sun just before he has Saturn square his Mercury, and so I don't want you to think that I'm singling out William for negativity. I've got something pretty similar coming my way pretty soon. Now, as far as solar arc directions, there is one solar arc direction in Prince William's chart that I wanted to look at, and this is his solar arc So solar arc direction. So what we're doing with solar arc directions, remember, is we are moving all the planets 1 degree for every year. So, Prince William is, how old is he? He's going to be coming up for 42. So you move everything 42 degrees. And so you can see that if we move, so if we take his, he's got his Venus at 2540 Taurus. Now you could say that the Venus is connected with the father, because he's got, if you take the IC as being the father, Venus, he's got 2 degrees 28 IC. So maybe it's connected with father. It's probably also connected with, of course, Venus is also linked with his mother. I think Diana had Venus. Did she have Venus around that point as well? But solar arc directed Saturn is at 2514 Scorpio. So solar arc directed Saturn is moving towards an opposition of his Venus, and that won't be exact for another few months. Now, you could say his wife is sick. I don't know, supposedly. I don't know we don't really know what's wrong with Catherine, Princess of Wales. But him having Saturn opposition his Venus, he's already had his wife to worry about, and now he's got his father to worry about. And I think that Saturn opposition Venus it's going to make him feel quite down, particularly as he's got Saturn moving to a square of his Mercury, and he's got Neptune squaring his ascendant. So yeah, I think things are difficult for him. Then we got to consider Harry. What is Harry thinking? There's Harry. I just want to point out to one transit which I've highlighted before, and this transit, there's, again, I must emphasize, this is a chart for the announcement of the Cancer. I'm sure Harry would have known about it before, but there's Harry's IC 1702 Taurus, and so Uranus is on his moon mid-heaven midpoint. So that moon on his IC, that is the foundations of who he is, and it of course has a big relationship to his father. The IC is the father, and please, I mean, I always get comments about who his real father is, but I've looked at it. I mean, there's no evidence that really, if you actually look at the details, that his father is anyone but Charles III. I mean, I know people are going to probably comment about this, but his father is there are issues around his father, and he's got Uranus on his IC. He's got Uranus moving towards his moon, and he's got Uranus on his midheaven moon midpoint. I think Harry is possibly going to be more affected than William. And I know that William's got a lot of difficult stuff going on, but this kind of hits the real foundations of Harry's chart. Where should he be? Where does he belong? It's this kind of thing. And I think this really emphasizes this, and the fact that it's a bit of a shock for him. I think he feels shock. I don't think he knows what to do, and I think it is really difficult. And of course, it hasn't helped that he's put himself into this position where he's estranged himself not just from his family but also from the British public. So yeah, it's not too great for Harry. What about Meghan? Here's Meghan's chart. Now, remember, on January the 25th, there was a full moon. The full moon was at 5 Leo. So on January the 25th, Meghan had a full moon exactly on her Mercury. So Mercury is about, the way you think, your perceptions of the world around you. And then this full moon came along, and I think it really shook things up. And I think she sees things. With the full moon, you see the reality of the situation. And I think that the full moon was priming her for that. And somehow this announcement with Charles and the Cancer and how Harry's being affected, I think she sees the reality of it. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I don't think it's about that. It's just that her Mercury and her understanding of what is going on are quite intense, and perhaps Meghan now perhaps sees that it's more that things going on in her royal family are more serious than she'd imagined. I would think. I don't want to go on about it though. Finally, I suppose I should mention Prince George. I've talked about Prince George before, but just a reminder that Prince George was born with on a full moon. This is Prince George who is William's eldest son. So the announcement relates to his grandfather, King Charles III, and there his sun is at 29:59 Cancer, and his moon is at 28:17 Capricorn. Now, as I pointed out quite recently, Pluto has been going conjunct his moon and opposition his sun. I mean, this is a really dramatic thing for him, and I do think that with Prince George, he has got a lot of water in his chart. He has got Jupiter in Cancer, Mars in Cancer, Mercury in Cancer, Sun in Cancer. He's got Scorpio rising. He's got Saturn in Scorpio. He's very watery. He is incredibly sensitive. I almost feel that Prince George was picking up on all this before it happened. I almost feel that he kind of knew, with this Pluto going across his Sun and the full moon. I do have a sense of that he was sort of aware of all this, and I think that I think this has had an impact on him. It is having a major. I know you would say it would have an impact on him, all this drama, but with that full moon, 29 Cancer across from 28 Capricorn, I think it's having a really big impact, and I don't think the impact is necessarily going to end. We have to remember that Pluto, it moves into Aquarius, then it comes back into at the end of the year, sort of summer, autumn. Pluto goes back into Capricorn, so Pluto will opposition his sun one more time. So the sun is about him, the men in his life, his father, his grandfather. So he's got Pluto hitting his sun this year. So it's again. And one other thing about Prince George relates to there is a full moon on his birthday. This is the sort of lunation before. This is on his birthday, July the 21st, 2024. There is a full moon. In other words, this full moon repeats itself on his birthday on July the 20th. I think it's July the 21st. So at the exact same degrees. So him having a full moon on his birthday, that's going to emphasize the whole thing all over again. I can illustrate this by looking at Prince George's solar return for the year. So there is his solar return, and you can see, the solar return is just after the full moon. So the full moon is just passing, but that the full moon, the day before his solar return, this full moon was hitting his sun, and I think that's I think this is going to be difficult. It is going to be a difficult year for the whole family, I think, and Prince William. We look at Prince William's one. This is the final chart I'm going to look at before I close. If we look at here's Prince William's chart. So if we look at Prince William's solar return for 2024, in other words, when the sun returns to when he was born, we can see that at the time of his birthday, the moon is moving towards fullness. So the moon is there is actually a full moon. The full moon the moon will make a full moon right across his sun. I think the day after his birthday, there's a full moon. So full moon hits his sun. So for Prince George and for William, with full moons very close to their birthdays, within a day of each of their birthdays this year, that full moon is about realization, seeing the truth of the matter. What's happening to their family, their approach to kingship. And I think that both William and George have questions about kingship. I pointed out before in a previous video, but I don't think George is going to be happy about the concept of being king at some stage. I'm not convinced he's suited for it. And I think both father and son are going to be, with the illness of their of Charles, they're starting to think about it. And so it is an issue for both of them. Okay, that's all I'm going to say for today. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you found that useful. If you did find that interesting or useful, I'd be very grateful if you like this video. If you're not subscribed and you found it interesting and useful, I'd be grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.